Hey yo, what is good, guys? Welcome back to another video. The stock market isn't really looking too good, if I'm being honest. And honestly, we're falling down to the downside, but we're honestly just falling down pretty slow, relatively slow, but we're still going to the downside. We have a lot of stocks to talk about, some stocks that are kind of standing out, and some news, data, and honestly, just a lot to talk about in general. We do have China stocks kind of breaking to the upside. We have some good news with Alibaba, and Alibaba is spiking up a decent amount. But one stock that did stand out is LAC, lithiums. And honestly, man, lithium, sorry, is honestly spiking. We started off at $3 overnight. We went up to $5, and now we're still spiking to the upside. We have more room to move to the upside, but honestly, have your patience with this one before you take this one and see where the price movements in the chart is going. Right now, we're making some higher highs on the 5-minute chart. It's looking pretty good. Some other stocks, we do have Apple falling down, and honestly, falling down all day. We got that big red in the morning, and then just making some higher lows over time basically, and every chart is basically bearish on Apple. So if you guys are in Apple, I do recommend getting out. And honestly, 30 minutes, we just have all 30-minute red candles. One level that I do want to see if we can retake is that 252.23 to that 252.5. And then past that, look at 253.5, 254, and then all the way up to that 255 level if we can break above that. But a level right now is going to be that 251.5. We did have a decent bounce off of that so far, and we had another bounce on the previous 30-minute. But with that being said, below that, look at 250. 250 is going to be a key level, and if we break below that, we can look even more bearish overall with Apple. We did lose yesterday's gains and the day before that, and we do have some room to move downwards all the way down to like 247.3, and then 240 or 250, 248.5, and then all the way down to those levels. So please have your patience overall with the market, and we're falling down even lower. SPY is one that I want to watch, that 660 level. If we break below that, look at 659.5, 658.5, 657.5, and 655 to the downside. SPY, honestly, we were moving kind of slow at first, and we had this big red, and now we're still moving to the downside. If we do start going back up, look at 661.5, 662.5, 663.5, and then all the way up to that 664.5 level to 665. Honestly, we are looking like we're breaking down and losing some gains. But with that being said, right now with the SPY, we're at the lows from like Friday and Thursday. So it's not really too bad. We're not moving too bad to the downside, but this can continue for a couple of days. But with that being said, man, a lot of times with the SPY, man, we see these dips getting bought. And honestly, we have some big dips like this, like on this day, back in September 16th, we did have a decent sell-off for a couple of days, and then we bought those dips and then went back up to all-time highs, had another sell-off, and then went back up. So we could potentially get a big sell-off and they come back up, but please, like I said before, man, have your patience with the stock market. Before we get into any other stock supports and resistance and some plays, let's get into some news. So basically, man, first off, I want to talk about the Fed Watch tool, just because it is honestly, it was something, a big thing. We had new home sales as well come out, so that is going to be something big. So there's a lot to really talk about here. So first off, man, we did have a surge in the new home sales. It did pretty decent, and we had basically 800,000 units last month. And on Wednesday, the sales pace for July was revised higher to 664,000 for previous 652,000. So that is a little bit big, and it's big overall. And honestly, this doesn't really look too good for our recent rate cuts, because it is showing that the economy is still moving pretty strong. And like I said before, Alibaba is going pretty high with their budget past 50 billion now. So we are kind of getting into a zone of China versus the US AI war, basically, or AI race to say. So this is one big thing that can move AI stocks for the US down a decent amount. Other people might start investing in the Alibaba like we've seen today. And we got the fear and greed. We're at 59 right now. Yesterday we were at 58. So we are a little bit higher with the greed, but we could potentially get into neutral and start selling off a little bit more. And then for the Fed Watch tool, man, we are at a 94.1% chance of a cut in October and a 77% chance in December. Nothing really much changed, but this can really move market certainty overall. So I like to look at the fear and greed, and also like to look at the Fed Watch tool overall. And then looking at the calendar, man, today is not really that busy. We just had the new home sales, and honestly came in at 8,000. And on Thursday, we have a little bit bigger. So we have the initial jobless claims, GDP. We have trade balance in goods, retail inventory, wholesale inventory, durable goods, and some other ones that are a little bit bigger. Existing home sales is going to be big as well. So Thursday is going to be a big day as well. Along with that, Friday is going to be a big day as well. We're going to get personal income, personal spending, PCE, core PCE. Consumer sentiment is going to be big too. That's going to be 30 minutes after market opens, and the rest is going to be an hour before market opens. So you might potentially see some pre-market moves with these, and then 30 minutes after the consumer sentiment might move the market as well. So be cautious if you guys have some overnight trades for Thursday going into Friday and as well as tonight, because this can be a big market mover and it can change if you're profitable or not with your trade. So be cautious while trading today. With that also being said, man, going back to yesterday when Fed chair came out, he basically said that the stock market is fairly overvalued. He's basically saying that the stock market is burning hotter than they should, and stocks did drop starting yesterday, and we're continuing that today. So he also didn't give any future hints on the future rate cuts, so that can also change the market certainty overall. And we're continuing the sell off. But Jerome is basically just keeping his opinions open and options open. And also, it is just harder decision than it should be. And with these housing numbers and the future data can really move the market with this. So please keep that in mind overall. We also had some tariffs on EU. So the 15% tariff on basically cars and the parts for the cars. So keep that in mind overall. That did bring Tesla down when this news came out, and that just came out right before I started recording this video. So I do want to include that. But we also got confirmed that basically pharma and aircraft parts are exempt from these tariffs. So we could potentially see Boeing taking a green from that, because I mean, maybe they might benefit. I don't know. I haven't even looked at it yet neither. We have a tiny green, but it's not really anything big. We did have that Boeing and Palantir deal that honestly didn't really bring it up too much, but you could have made some decent money if you guys did an overnight play. Let's talk about some of the plays. So I did have an Apple call option overnight. We got it at around that 253.5. Or I was scoping a 253.5 one, but I kind of just got it at 253.7, and I sold it this morning for around 20%. Didn't really make too much, but we did have that green candle that allowed me to sell it. Wanted to sell it early because I'm kind of a little bit bearish on the market right now, but honestly, it is 50-50. We're bearish until the buyers come in, start stepping in and bring the market up higher. And towards the bottom, man, I was kind of scoping out a play, but I didn't really get into one yet just because I'm going to be watching how it reacts to that 250 level. And if we break below that 250 level, it might do a bear play on Apple. But towards the end of the day, we could potentially get the scope out, because even if Apple is selling off overall, basically, we do have that green candle in the morning that can bring you around 5, 10, 20, even 50% sometimes. So that is one play that I'm scoping out at the end of the day, and potentially seeing how it reacts to that 250 level. Because if we can get a bounce off of that 250 level, we could potentially see the low for the day and potentially maybe get like 251 or something like that in the morning and give us some decent amount of money with that. But going back to OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank expand their Stargate with 5 new AI data center sites. So this is kind of big, but honestly, it's just official, and this can bring up, Oracle, SoftBank. So watch those stocks as well. We also have MU. So MU did report their earnings, and they did pretty decent. So their Q4 2025 highlights revenue at 11.32 billion, up 46% year over year. Adjusted EPS is 3.03, which is up 56.8 year over year. And adjusted gross margin is 45.7%. Q1 guidance revenue 12.2 billion to 12.8 billion. EPS is $3.60 to $3.90. And the cloud memory revenue is up 213% year over year. So it did do pretty good after earnings, but we do have a decent sell-off continuing on with today. But honestly, a lot of stocks like this, technology stocks, are selling off today. So that could be just a sell-off of technology, but the earnings was pretty good. Not even going to lie. But going back to Baba, man, Baba is doing pretty good. I don't think I have that screenshot that I had before, but Baba is spiking up a decent amount. So Kathy Wood basically bought shares in Alibaba yesterday for the first time in 4 years. And honestly, Alibaba did spike up after hours. And we're still kind of having a tiny continuation, but we did just have a sell-off recently. But with that being said, do watch that 180 level once again. If we could break above that, you could potentially get 185 to 190. And then if we start breaking down, you can watch the 175.5 first. And then if we break down below 175, you could potentially have this gap to fill back down all the way down to like 170 at least, and then see how it reacts at 170. But just have your patience overall. China is spiking up a decent amount, and honestly, it is kind of insane. But let's talk more about the VIX. So basically right now the VIX is looking a little weird because the VIX is up after the S&P 500 is basically up as well. But in the past, when the VIX is up 1.39% in the past 7 days, while the S&P is near all-time highs, you could basically see a pullback with this. With that also being said, we have a 50% chance of it being positive 1 week later, 42% 2 weeks later, 8% 3 weeks later, 42% 1 month later, and then 42% 2 months later. So this is something big because the VIX is indeed, or yesterday was kind of weird because we were kind of spiking, and honestly, kind of last week we were kind of spiking with the VIX, but the S&P 500 was at all-time highs. But we did just have a big sell-off while I was recording this video. That is kind of insane. But honestly, man, that 660, like I said, is a key level to watch. We kind of had a little bounce off of it, but we might retest it and go back down. We could potentially look at that a little bit later. But watch VIX as well. We have gold. Gold is indeed, I think it sold off a little bit earlier. It is still selling off indeed. So gold is indeed selling off. And honestly, we see tiny pullbacks like this all the time. And honestly, you shouldn't be cautious if you guys are in a trade. We do see a pullback and then just a new high. And once it starts breaking out, it breaks out. You know, we have a little pullback, consolidation, rip, pullback, consolidation, rip. So we could potentially see the same thing. Just let it maybe go back down to like 720 to 700. We might get another rip to the upside on gold. We do have Bitcoin up a decent amount, but it's not really moving like as good as it should be. But with that being said, we did see it hit that 113, and potentially we can potentially get, like we seen on the 18th, 118. So just have your patience with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP is almost at that $3 level. Ethereum's kind of moving a little bit slower, but if you guys do want to trade these, IBIT is an ETF that moves with Bitcoin. You guys can trade options on this if my internet could load it, but you guys can trade options on IBIT, ETHA. ETHA is for Ethereum, and then you guys can trade the other stocks like MSTR, Coinbase, Robinhood. Those are all doing pretty decent. And honestly, that's pretty good overall. But with that being said, man, earnings, let's talk a little bit about earnings. So we did have Costco. Costco is going to be after close tomorrow. So Costco is probably the other bigger one for this week. And then the rest of the week is kind of slow. So you guys can screenshot this list if you guys want it, just for future reference, or if you guys are interested in any of those stocks in general. But with that being said, man, some of the plays that I'm watching is going to be a downward trend for Apple. And we're still selling off. We've been selling off all day. I was thinking about getting into a put option around 254. That would have made me a lot of money, but I kind of thought that buyers was going to step in a little bit more. One stock that was kind of moving a little bit slower than the overall stock market was NVIDIA. We were kind of still selling off and we are kind of looking pretty bearish, but it was kind of just holding its range until we finally broke out recently, and it is breaking out to the downside by a lot. Same thing with the SPY. The SPY was kind of consolidating a little bit. We had a big sell consolidation, and then now we have a bigger sell overall, and we're still touching that 660. So maybe by the time this video is uploaded, you guys can go check out the SPY and see if we broke below that 660. And honestly, you can potentially scope out a play upside or downside, just see how it reacts to that 660. We might get a bounce and buyers might come back in, and or it might get a bigger sell-off. But with that being said, man, we had multiple sell-offs in the past, so don't get too scared unless you see us go like the April lows basically. But we had big sell-offs and we bought them back and hit all-time highs. So this could be potentially a time to get into some longer-term call options. But please have your time and patience in the market. One stock that I don't really recommend trading until you see a clear sign upwards is Apple, just because I feel like it's overextended, and maybe we might be able to retest that 254 maybe if the market does start going back up. But with that being said, I think Apple is slowing down a little bit more. I think the iPhone hype is slowing down as well. But honestly, man, we did have something come out today saying that the demand isn't as good as it was, but it still is pretty good, but it's not as good as, you know, people hyped it up to be. So Apple is one I'm still watching, but I think NVIDIA might be next up on the list to test that 180 once again. But NVIDIA has been slowing down, and if China does like kind of show that they can catch up, NVIDIA might start selling off a little bit more. Tesla has been doing pretty good as well. Tesla is one that I was trying to look for a play. With this news, you could have probably played Tesla to the downside from that 240 level. I was going to watch that 240 level for a put option. I should have got it, but I seen it retested and then go back down, retested. And honestly, that would have been a good time to get in, but I was just too late. I was worried about making the video. So honestly, I missed out on this play. But honestly, looking at Tesla testing that 240 to that, or not the 240, sorry, that 440 to that 445, you could potentially get another put option. But right now with those EU trade or EU tariffs, that might bring it down a little bit more. But with that all being said, man, today is honestly looking like another sell-off. But if you guys want to get some plays, news early, anything like that, you guys can follow me on my X account, NextGen Wealth Tips. If you guys want those news, plays, anything early, just go check me out if you guys want. With that being said, smash the like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Good luck trading today, guys.